So we are now jumping right into the next session. We're talking about regenerative capitalism and how to get it done now. And I'm delighted to hand over to Nele, Terveen and Lars Eiermann. Nele is PhD candidate and sustainability researcher at the TUM. She has been visiting Stanford, will be visiting Stanford, has been to Harvard, and really has a passion for the economic transformation. She's also a fellow of the think tank in the Club of Rome and is just passionate about the things she does. Then Lars Eiermann, he's the Chief Sustainable Officer at the TUM Ventures Lab. I'm delighted that he's here. Applause, please.
Hello. Setting the stage. It's not so difficult after this great speech of Janus. I think he made a perfect preparation for our next topic. Regenerative capitalism, how can this work together? I just want to set the stage with 3 words. First is excitement. I'm so excited to be here today. It's a fantastic event. It's a fantastic setup. It's a fantastic push for circular economy and a regenerative economy to push things forward. And I see this with all those great startups where we have the privilege to support the TUM Venture Labs, which are right now on stage. Take Bavertis, take To0, take Container Grid, take Stable. Take Twino, this is fantastic, but many, many more. So we see a lot of motivation from the generations to come. Second word, together. Roughly 5 months ago, I was standing at the same space here at the former Unternehmertum to discuss with great minds and great visionaries about the transformation and the resilience in energy. And one thing I had in mind, which kept us all the way, was correlation of the willing. This was something like a mantra, and this was something which Nele and myself joined the whole way. It was a way of connection and unity. So today, we are really, really proud, with the support of Heike Schumacher and Andreas Reiser from Max Planck, that we have so fantastic people here to join us, great minds and friends, to push this thing forward. And the last word, opportunity. I think we have seen it perfectly in the speech before. We have to look for the opportunity, how to bring it together. We are at the cusp of circular economy. We can bring those things forward. We can combine great tech, where we're standing for, with the passion of startups, so that we push clean tech, we push sustainability, we push circular economy together with business models to create a greater good, to have a significant impact. And this is, I think, a fantastic thing to really create a regenerative economy. And this will lead me to my closing words. I think with this mission, I'm really, really happy to hand over to Nele, who is, with her enthusiasm, bringing us walking the talk from Davos to Munich. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lars. So, welcome everybody. To get into our topic, I brought a little story from Davos. I was kindly invited to join the WEF from Carlos from the Club of Rome, and I attended a sustainability-related session which was held in the so-called SDG tent, a sustainability tent, which was taking place where the black dot is in the upper corner. And it was a great session, and as always, we've been discussing problems and a bit of solutions, and then I thought, when I exited the tent, that the main congress from the World Economic Forum took place where the red arrow is. So it was separated by 1.5 kilometers. And while I was thinking through that, I thought, this is the perfect picture or a metaphor of the current zeitgeist of how the situation and the conversations are still fragmented. We talk in silos and we think in silos. And I thought, together with Carlos, we need to change the narrative. We need to ask better questions. We need to ask positive questions. And it's more about creating and identifying the right incentives to understand the power structures of what can be actually done, also economically speaking, what is possible within a system that is by nature not defined to be sustainable. But what kind of feasibility windows do we have? What can we actually address? And how can we identify the right incentives in a timely manner? And this brought up this amazing panel. And me as a young researcher, you are all role models to me, and I'm overly excited to have you on stage. And to start off, I gladly call Carlos, the Vice President from the Club of Rome, on stage. Welcome, Carlos. So a system thinker from the sustainability background, very, very important to have on stage. And as I already said, when I talk about incentives, there need to be a business case behind that. So we have a financial expert here, former CFO from BMW, 30 years of experience in the industry. He's also now in the Board of Administration in the DRSC. He has shifted the financial KPIs towards the sustainability KPIs and now takes a focus on responsible leadership with the BMW Foundation. Please call on stage Nicolas Peter. Thank you so much. And I'm very, very happy that there are already existing solutions and inspiring role models and great leaders here with us. So I think it was 2 months ago that this woman was on stage with Michelle Obama, presented her own startup at Bits and Britzels, and she's actually working in the area of energy transition. And when I heard her for the first time, I was like, yeah, this energy, we need that on stage. So I'm so happy to welcome Flore here from Point 12. And another very, very inspiring and amazing woman is Lubomila. I think a lot of people may know her. The list of awards is long, is very long. So 30 under 30 list in Forbes. You have a background in the venture capital industry, in the finance industry. You are a founder yourself in the area of impact measurement. And very, very important for Circular Republic and the whole topic of the festival, you have created the Green Tech Alliance. So you know how collaborations work. So please call on stage Lubomila. And this place where we are right now is one of the best examples, a leading example, where science meets practice. And science is one of the most important things in the world. I think it's been 2 or 3 months that we met in Boston, Dietmar. So we have the director of Max Planck with us, Professor Dietmar Harhoff. He leads the Innovation and Competition Department and is the leading researcher in the world. So please welcome Dietmar on stage with us. So having said this, it's very, very amazing to have all of you with us. And to start off, Carlos, it's been a long time that we met in Davos. So from a Club of Rome perspective, how can we bring the SDG tent into the main Congress?
Well, first of all, thank you, Nele, for organizing and for the Circular Republic Festival for organizing this conversation. I feel like at home here because myself, my background, I am an aerospace engineer from the Polytechnic University of Madrid, and I was for 20 years an entrepreneur in the digital sector. So I resonate easily with the spirit of this place, with the spirit that we can create something new, and we are creating many new things from engineering, from technology, amazing technologies. I lived that spirit, very much so, personally. And at the same time, I have to say that we realized that the new is not necessarily the good. I mean, my dear friend and colleague Janusz explained already a lot. You indeed made my life easier and this intervention shorter. The new is not necessarily the good. In the last few centuries, but particularly in the last 6 or 7 decades, we have, with the new, and in particular including technologies, we have accelerated so many trends which have created now self-inflicted existential threats. Plenty of them, you name them. But life, and this is a quote from Harry Potter's movie, life is about choosing between the good and the easy. You know, if it was about choosing between the good and the bad, it would be easy to choose. No, it's between the good and the easy. And to some extent, when we see so much innovation, research and innovation going on, the easy way is to continue in that trend of we are creating new things, but not necessarily addressing the challenges that we have as humanity. So what would be the good? The good, I think, that was very well said by Janusz, is the purpose has to be equitable human well-being within a healthy planet. And we even say equitable human well-being for a healthy planet, but for the survival of our species, you know. This is the goal that we have to address. And I know it sounds like big, but it can be, you know, translated in many ways to very different contexts, you know. Equitable human well-being for a healthy planet. The good news is that we know that we don't need to go on increasing our ecological footprint to achieve well-being. We don't need to go further into this crazy race of more and more energy and resources consumption. Because we know from ancient times, from traditional cultures, but also from modern science, that well-being doesn't come from the accumulation of or the growing level of consumption. It comes from the quality of our relationships with ourselves, with other humans, with life at large, and with time. And we are in industrialized countries, we are in a situation where we have broken that, you know. I mean, we continue accumulating consumption without creating more well-being since decades, you know. We have a challenge which is different for the high consumption countries and sectors of populations, and from other cases, the low consumption countries. For us, in this place, it's about how do we reduce drastically our ecological footprint, our consumption of energy, our consumption of resources, without reducing our levels of well-being, because of course nobody wants to reduce the levels of well-being, without reducing or even increasing the quality of our relationships, so in real terms increasing our levels of well-being. While in other places the equation is different, the goal is different, which is increasing the levels of well-being while not incurring in high levels of ecological footprint. That means doing research and innovation in a very different way. That's a different compass, you know, for all of you as entrepreneurs, as researchers, as technologists. And touching, and I finish with that, the concept of capitalism. My take on that is that when we say capitalism, I don't even understand what we are talking about. I advocate to stop using that word because it covers so many different things that if we use that word, we are in the dilemma expressed by Slavoj Žižek when he says, you know, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism, you know. My take is capitalism is many different things, and rather than asking, can capitalism become regenerative? Difficult to say yes or no to a question as big as that if we use that term. We have to consider that what we call capitalism is made of many different things. It's made of entrepreneurship, it's made of innovation, it's made of markets, but it's made also of rentier economy, you know? And these are contradictory between them, and some are non-regenerative at all, and others could be. So rather the question should be, I think, what kind of capitalism, if you still want to use the word, do we need to allow for all organizations, companies, but not only, to become regenerative by default? That would be the question I leave to the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for elaborating your perspective on that standpoint. So I always say I am an environmentalist by heart and an economist by brain. And looking at Nicolas, so how can we create incentives within a system that is not designed to be sustainable? So environmentally speaking, sustainable. How can we create incentives for corporate leaders? How can we understand the power structures? How can we understand to really take action and understand how to identify the incentives for corporate leaders in the topic of responsible leadership? What would you say, how to talk to corporate leaders in that regard?
Well, first of all, if you reflect maybe on the last 15 years, I believe in the way we discuss this question, we are probably too negative. We have already achieved a lot. We have achieved a lot by some regulations, and those regulations have driven industries, maybe in the first step to follow regulation, but in the second step, every businessman sees opportunities. So if I have to follow something, isn't there an opportunity? Isn't there a chance to grow my business? And if you reflect on the industry I know best, the automotive industry, today, just taking the German key players in this industry spend per year more than 20 billion euros in research and development. And 20 billion euros in research and development mainly focused on two topics which are linked to each other: sustainability and digitalization. On the other hand side, I believe it's important that, and it's exactly the right place to discuss it. I read today in online that Helmut said yesterday that this is the Silicon Valley of circular economy, and probably that's right. Why is it right? Because if you again take the automotive industry, my forecast would be there will be growth, whether we like it or not. There will be growth in this industry, and I believe, to be honest, it's probably not a bad news. Mm-hmm. Why will there be growth? Because we've just seen the numbers. We grew from 3.5 to 8 billion in the last 15, 20 years. And we will grow to 10 billion by 2045, 2015 in this area. So there will be growth. So our task now is, and growth needs growing demand as well. There will be a demand for additional energy, all sorts of products. And our task is, and we are well positioned to make this journey a sustainable one. So I see this as an opportunity. And if you take a company like BMW, but you can take others. Very, very early, already 10 years ago, the company invested into products where you can completely recycle interior materials. Today we spend a lot of money in order to develop systems and technologies to recycle, to reuse raw materials from batteries, which is absolutely key on one hand side to limit the use of our natural resources and to follow market demand. So that's why I believe this combination between a clear path towards more regenerative and circular economy, which a lot of companies are really committed to, but on the other hand side, to see this as a business opportunity, because business opportunities is what is accelerating best and increasing the speed of the transformation. My view is that probably the best combination to and what is important is to scale technologies. Yeah. And the best combination to scale technologies is a cooperation between startups on one hand side, and industry leaders, technology leaders on the other hand side. And this is why I believe that's a perfect place to discuss it here.
I mean, you're absolutely right. So thank you for saying this. And I buy the argument that I framed it a little bit more too negative, but it's not fast enough. So do you think that looking at corporate leaders again, that they're doing enough right now in a kind of timely manner? You just mentioned speed. Would you say that the efforts are enough? And how can we do more?
I believe what probably is definitely needed also to increase the speed, and I will give you a very, very concrete example.
I like that.
To shift the automotive industry towards electric drivetrains, you need battery module production. Well, that's you need it. You have to produce somewhere your battery modules, and the best way and the most sustainable way is to produce battery modules close to the plants, because then you have less logistic costs, less CO2 emissions, and. In Europe, it takes us probably 2 years to get the authorization to build a battery module production nearby existing automotive plants. In the US, in 6 months, you start the groundwork. And this is where we lose. This is where we definitely lose time, and we have to think about, despite all the willingness and the motivation of politicians, how can we really accelerate those processes?
Yeah, talking about politicians, I've just been to Brussels and came back kind of frustrated in terms of speed and scaling up processes. So that's why I look at startups now who drive disruptive innovations, and I love that. So I would be very curious to hear how are you solving essential climate crisis issues through profitable businesses? How do you walk that talk already? How do you become such role models? Lubomila, can you elaborate on that, please?
As always, I like to be a little bit of a devil's advocate, so I'll stand up for the EU a little bit. Just as a comment to what you were saying, well, we might be quite frustrated with the amount of legislation that we're seeing popping up. We counted in Plan A 160 legislations in the last 18 months. And these, of course, are not trickling down into one particular industry, but actually are spreading across. You're really looking into solving for systemic issues that we've seen in the economy, talking about legislation related to overproduction in the fashion industry, banning combustion engines, which obviously is shifting the mindset of the automotive industry. You have the energy transition that has also been pressured by the geopolitical setup that we have. So I would say the Inflation Reduction Act, the approach that the US has taken, which is heavily focused on expanding the US economy and kind of the impact that companies within the US will be able to have on GDP, is not necessarily looking into the depth of the crisis that was really sadly, but also nicely displayed in all of the slides shown on the last presentation. What we have been doing for the last 6 years is working with more than 1,500 businesses from all across sectors. The European Commission is also a client, which doesn't make me biased because I don't look into their data, but it gives me a view on kind of the approach that they're taking, which is definitely following legislation and digitization. We work with companies like the BMWs of this world, also companies like Flore, but also startups like the N26s of this world, banks that need to transition like Deutsche Bank, BNP, and the common thread amongst all of those, regardless of the size, is that they are absolutely freaked out and quite concerned that the competitiveness that they're standing for as per previous successes is probably not allowed anymore. You're not allowed to transition in a convenient kind of manner because maybe there's a legislation that is ultimately pushing you to be a little bit more pragmatic, but also innovative, a little bit more digital. On the other hand, there's a consumer demand as well as also employee demand that is asking really big questions about the values that drive the definition of your existence. Do you make me feel comfortable enough for me to come for 8 hours in the day in the office and feel like you're selling me and buying me my values? am I feeling comfortable that the generation afterwards is going to be able to survive if this industry in which I exist is continuing in the way that it does? So I would say the signals are positive. The speed is never going to be fast enough because I live with a sense of urgency that unfortunately is increasing by the day. But what we believe in and what's our thesis and hypothesis that we stand for is the only way the economy is going to shift is by pioneers. And these are the companies that decide to stand up for a whole industry. And it's for companies that decide to take the inconvenient position of failing publicly in their commitments. There was quite a lot of, and I'll elaborate on that because this might sound a little bit dramatic. There was a set of companies in the last few months that made announcements, including Unilever. We have also a few clients within our realm that also have made that, which said, if we make a call for 2030 or 2050, we're doomed to fail because the corporate system doesn't work like that. We have 5-year terms for boards, the C-levels change based on also growth. There's KPIs that at the moment are not aligned to maybe the sustainability agenda that is for a decade. Therefore, we're moving away from these targets, which are long-term, opportunistic, a little bit romantic, a little bit too focused on a lot of hope and maybe less data. And we're going to switch to shorter-term agendas. And this trend for me is what gives me hope. And in the context even of the systemic shift that we're discussing here, are demonstrating that systemic shift is the big thinking, but also the pragmatic project definition that we all need. The 3 pillars by which we live not only in Plan A, but also in the Green Tech Alliance is collaboration, science, and also businesses at the core of that. If we fixate on these 3, I truly believe that we stand a chance for being able to hit the targets that the EU, but also the whole world has set itself.
Thank you so much for these elaborations. Speaking about science, which is the backbone of all innovations, and looking at Dietmar and also institutions like Max Planck, how can Max Planck scale up or speed up these processes, and what has to be done from your perspective? How do you see the whole scenery putting together startups and companies also with research and science?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, and back to a place that I really cherish because there's a special spirit here that catches you and carries you. So let me respond in 2 ways. The first one is the reaction of the scientists to this discussion by asking you to sort of step back and say, okay, as long as we assume that nobody here in industry, for example, gets up in the morning after breakfast and say, hey, how can I maximally pollute the planet or something like that, but instead is well-meaning and wants to do the good, as Carlos said, right? But doesn't really find it very easy, because if you do the good, you may reduce profit, and then you may be in issues with compliance and other things or regulation. So we're not in the current system that comes out of the extractive logic, right? The linear logic. We're not making it very easy to do the good. And of course, scientists have thought about that and have said, there is this price vector, there is pricing on CO2 and so forth. Can't do that. Wouldn't that do the job? No, it doesn't do the job alone. We know that by now, right? Economists are among the few who say, let's just do that and nothing else, or some economists are trying to do that. So we have to think about how to set up the system in a way to make it possible. Becoming more agile is one thing. So I would wish our policymakers to become more agile and to do things faster. At the same time, right, we're sort of caught in these 4-year electoral cycles. Yeah. So doing the right thing, if you lose 3/4 of a year before the next election, preparing for it, you lose another 3/4 of a year after the election to form a coalition, you're left with 2.5 years, and suddenly there is no space, no time to do the good things, to prepare the good governance mechanisms, and to shift our system in a way that allows to be less extractive, more circular, and so forth. So I think we need to think carefully about the governance. So that's what a scientist does. But then in Max Planck, we not only have people who think about the system, we also have people who do real science and try to work on the foundations of what we would have to do in order to get away from concrete into new materials that would be not carbon emissive, but capturing even, into new technologies, new catalysts and so forth. So science, as you said, can be the foundation of very powerful innovation. Innovation will be part of the mix that we will need in the future to go away from extractive to more circular. And foundational research, as we do it in Max Planck, then transferred into startups, as we try to do with some of our activities, supported by the Max Planck Foundation, supported by our programs. We try to approach young scientists who are burning for this objective. As all of you know, right? People are motivated to move in the right direction. So my conclusion right now is we have to make it as easy as possible for them to do the good thing.
Yeah. Wow, thanks for this very positive statement. I like that. And we have another woman here on stage who already created such a venture in the area of energy transition. So Flore, how would you say, how can we inspire young people to solve the issues of today through business models? How can we create the right incentives to step on that stage?
Yes. I think I'm going to be a little bit spicing things up here.
Like it, yeah.
I am not as optimistic as many of the voices I hear, and maybe you expect me. I'm, younger than others. I believe change happens when interests align.
Yeah.
And I don't think we will reach a circular economy just out of good motivation, good faith. Mm-hmm. I wish this would be enough, but I don't think this is enough. Change happens when interests align. I think we need to think in terms of macro, but also in terms of micro. And I'm going to be very unfaithful here. I actually have a background as a philosopher, but I'm going to think now as a pragmatist. I think we need to be industry-centric in this game to move things forward. And I will contradict some of the statements from before. What does it mean to be industry-centric? It means we need to think in terms of business case. And the reality is that today, sustainable alternatives are most of the time too costly and too complex.
Yeah, less attractive.
And I like that you brought this up also, Carlos, right? So sustainability and sustainable regulation most often, and you know that, Lubomila, brings complexity, right? So industry specific, I think I'm well placed to think in these terms as well, right? So I hate it when on panels people do sales and use the opportunity to do sales. I won't do sales, but what does my company do? We help industrial producers certify what they produce as being green. What I observe at the moment is that this push to green is actually a pull, and it's all regulation centric. And regulation is great. Regulation is great at creating incentives, at creating tons of carrots and sticks, and we need carrots and sticks, but this is not what is going to move the needle. Yeah. So I think we need to take this system thinking perspective to make sure that this bottom-up and top-down perspective meet, and that we can actually take a perspective on a business case perspective and saying, okay, what are the sustainable alternatives that we know where cost is the problem and where scale can help, right? And in the energy transition, we've learned a lot. We are able, with sticks and carrots, to make prices go down, right? So green, renewable electricity is the cheapest source of electricity now. This would have never happened without policy and regulation. So just to summarize, I think, we've reached a stage where there's lots of motivation, there's lots of goodwill. For some companies that can afford it, there is a certain alignment of interests, but I think we need to take a microeconomic perspective and think in terms of industrial firms, those that are low-margin businesses, how can we shift the needle and scale the components in the value chain that needs to be scaled so that sustainable alternatives can be cheaper and easier to achieve on a daily basis.
Yeah, thank you so much. It really resonates with what also leaves me puzzled sometimes. Like, how can the sustainability scenario be more attractive than the non-sustainability scenario? speaking in terms of numbers and also in terms of societal issues. So this is something where I don't know yet how to understand how to understand the power structures and create the right incentives on the macro and on the micro level, right? So startups, institutions, as Max Planck and also the Club of Rome and corporate leaders, I think they need to work together, hand in hand somehow, to create a fast transition towards a regenerative economy. And this brings me back to the point, so at the intersection of science and practice, so where do you see the windows of opportunities in a more timely manner, listening to some contradictory voices? So thanks to that, Flore. Carlos, what would you say as a summary for this now?
The opportunity is basically in the minds of people. It's basically because we are talking here about many different things at the same time. And the Club of Rome, we always go for the systemic perspective. Underlying all this, we need to go into a cultural revolution. Aurelio Peccei, the founder of the Club of Rome, already asked in 1984, so it will be 40 years next year, for a human revolution, a change of mindsets. And because what you have described is good, and the efforts of the industry are there, but we perceive how much the people in the industries are thinking, I really want this to succeed, this transformation to succeed, but I'm very much conditioned by the logic of operations in which, the logic of the market, of the regulations, etc. So it's not something that business by them can solve. I mean, we cannot say, as a society, we cannot say to business, this is your task. We cannot say, this is your task to the scientists. We cannot escape that this is a cultural revolution in which all society needs to be involved, in which, by the way, we have to bet on the humanity and the capacity of everybody, because if not, we will face, we are facing a lot of resistance by many people who say, no, thank you, not with me. You want me to change my behavior? Sorry. Because for many people, freedom is consumption, or consumption is freedom. So we have to get them on board. And the opportunity is there that so many people are aware of this gap between what they know has to be done and what they would like to do, but the reality which is still restricting. Let's use that gap as a source of energy. In a concrete example, we are promoting something which has been approved by the United Nations General Assembly last August, a decade of sciences for sustainable development. And we do that because we want to promote flipping the science model, so make a decade of transformation of the role of science and research and technology and innovation in society to address these big challenges, but all the sectors together. With policymakers, you mentioned policymakers, I cannot agree more with what you said, with society at large, and of course with business. Probably in a more organic way, not top-down, more organic, meaning a web of hubs around the world working in a different manner with all the sectors involved to address this big topic, this big challenge of equitable human well-being for a healthy planet. And I profit from the occasion to invite TU Munich to join this decade and become one of these hubs.
Maybe to add to the last two comments. My experience is that there has been a dramatic shift in mindset over the last 2 decades. I was more than 20 years in the strategic group of BMW, and I remember extremely well in the very beginning when we had the first CO2 regulations. We always thought, well, what is the cheapest way to fulfill the CO2 regulation? This completely changed. Today, it's a business case. And that's a very, very good news. It's a business case. So you think, well, there's a market. How can I develop products for this market? How many electric cars do I need to fulfill markets need? How many different models How can I further develop the quality of the electric drivetrain by new technologies in terms of battery and battery cells and so on. So on. That's very positive because this is accelerating. The fact that it's becoming a business case is accelerating the transformation, and therefore I can't agree more that this has to be industry centric. Industry is a lever to accelerate the transformation, in particular the ecologic transformation.
Yeah. Please respond, Lubomila. Yeah.
If I can add a few examples that are incredibly concrete that show that there's a return on investment on sustainability in businesses, understand it, that would actually also start with one industry that we mentioned a few times. We've been working for 4 years with BMW, and we just released a product that is a white label product within the BMW platform, and we're allowing for the fleet management clients of BMW to track their emissions and go on a decarbonization journey where they progressively move to EVs. Why is such product a good thing to launch, knowing that there's obviously a historical reliance on combustion engines? Because the legislation is coming, the clients want to stay loyal, but they need to know how. This is one example. Another example is in the fashion industry. We've been working with Flore, the French conglomerate, and what we've seen with them is that after a sequence of social impact as well as all sorts of initiatives for decarbonization, the clients were still not necessarily getting it because they needed to go through these social impact reports that, let's be honest, like 70 pages on a Sunday maybe, but not on a Monday morning. And this is not the way you purchase as well. When you go into an e-commerce website, you don't go through the journey of the social impact report, going into the clothes and so on. I just joined a few, now close to a year back, the sustainability board of Flore. And as part of the decision for expanding the board, now there's a client that has joined. Why? Because they have understood that the barrier to be able to communicate sustainability is becoming a heavy burden on the revenue as well. Because you can think that you're going into the mind of the client with all of your initiatives by popping up on their social media here and there with a social impact related project or a product. Still, the consistency of how they perceive you as an organization does not necessarily build up. And this build up doesn't have a time span because you can't do it over the course of 3 years because, let's be honest, you open up your phone, you're on Instagram, you have 2 minutes to capture the attention, and that probably is going to be distributed across 20 brands. Another example, and this is also from the fashion industry, is Gani, a Scandinavian company that when they started working with us, we only had one objective with them, and that was to put together a social impact report. 3 years down the line, with the guidance that we've given, especially related to data assessment, they have a department for the materials of the future. What pushed them into this? They decided to take the inconvenient path of opening up their whole social impact as well as sustainability agenda on social media. And they were quite cheeky because they decided to also explain in a lot of detail the mistakes that they were making. Hey, here's our mushroom bag, and this is opportunity 150 to get it right. It's not working. It's not going to come to market anytime soon. When you look at these examples, you understand that there's consistency in the wish for businesses to stay relevant, to stay aligned with values, but also to be compliant and competitive in a reality where not only social media, but also extensive polarization that is impacted by politics and other topics. We have, as consumers, a lot of options to designate and to being disappointed. But the truth is that the companies that make the best choice to be able to transition are those that take the inconvenient path of knowing that there's no time, but also understanding that their clients are going to be loyal only if you work with their values and you give them data.
Thank you so much for these insights. And I would like to ask one more question to that. So why did they actually do that? Was it one specific person or was it a complex system background? Why did they decide to go on that pioneering, inconvenient, uncomfortable pathway?
I think in the success of any company, there's always a team, and this team might have kicked off with one excited soldier that is looking into the topic and trying to profit to others that there's going to be a lot of money to be lost if you don't fixate on sustainability. But I would say in all of these cases, there was always three particular criteria that were covered up. Management buy-in and kind of board understanding of the importance of the topic. A strong sustainability team that was not built up of one human, but actually maybe excited other people within different departments, and maybe this one human then was able to build together a team. Yeah. And then the final element was the sense of urgency that was also allowing for some inconvenience down the path, because let's be honest, Alphabet, the fleet management company of BMW, going out with a product like that, which is the first in the whole world for fleet managers to be able to assess their carbon emissions, was not necessarily a convenient announcement, because it required for us to work for more than 2 years on making sure that the science was correct, that the clients were going to be able to go through a smooth journey, that the product was white label so that it fits within the experience, but also there was a scientifically proven partner like us that was significantly tinier in its existence, but also, I would say, in size, that was trusted and was tested over a long time. It is going to be a game of timelines, and anyone that is not looking at the clock at the moment is probably figuring out some sort of an agenda that is totally relevant in 6 months.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lubomila. That's great. So I think we need brave leaders with a long-term perspective that take this pioneering path and are resilient enough to withstand the inconvenience along the pathway, right? And maybe to look at our clock right now, I would like to take a flashlight round from each of you. If you had one wish for the future, an incentive-based outlook, what is the one thing, the key thing that you wish for, or what you looking at 2030, 2040? Dietmar, what would you say?
So we're talking about leadership here, and this is very interesting because the perspective I gave you before was, hey, we have these systems, there are forces against doing the good as an easy solution because it's made so difficult. I think in all of our systems, in science, in industry, in other aspects of society, we tend over time to get entrenched, right? We build our habits, our views, and so forth. Leadership for me means to have people who take us out of that entrenchment, who show us new ways of seeing things, of pioneering, and thus then break out and make it easy to do the good thing.
Thank you. Lubomila, your wish?
More jokes and positivity. I know that this might sound a little bit controversial, but I think all of us are somewhat in between of standing here, not only on stage, but also in the audience, out of the wish for things to change fast. But we probably have gone 20 steps forward in our thinking that something has changed, so that we still have to have hope and continue on a daily basis to work on this. If we have a lot of sense of humor down the line and just continue pushing each other to be positive, probably we're going to be able to go through the fight effectively.
Nice, I love that. Flore, what would you say?
More collective intelligence to align interests, to make circular and sustainable options just a no-brainer. That should be the easiest path going forward.
The clicking, connecting the dots. And Nicolas, what's your word?
Less ideology and more science-based discussion. If you take the automotive industry, I personally believe it's extremely difficult to forecast how exactly the share of different drivetrains will look like in 15, 20, 25 years, because there might be even technologies which are not on the table today, which could play a role and be emission-free. So less ideology, more science-based, and less nitty-gritty regulation. I believe regulation is extremely relevant to have a framework, to give orientation to industries, to give orientation in particular to companies which make long-term investments. A business case for a car is a business case over 20, 25 years. If you look at the overall cash flows. So you need less nitty-gritty, less and framework and stability of the framework.
Thank you for your clear words. Carlos?
Yes, my wish is an invitation to all of you by the Club of Rome and its flagship programs, Earth for All and The Fifth Element, to join the journey. This is a journey of exploration because, let's be honest, we don't know how to make it. The paradox being that we know that we can reconcile human well-being with the planet, with a healthy planet. We know that it can be done, but we don't know how to make it. So it's a journey of exploration, and it's a call to the humanity in each of us, not only you, everybody on the planet, for an adventure, you know, if that's part of the human essence. We are explorers, we are adventurers. Maybe we forgot that part, but it's essential to call back that capacity. The journey will not be easy. I mean, interesting journeys explorations are not easy, but it will be exciting. At sometimes it can be fun. So I agree that the humor and it will be good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think we can't do it alone. That's what Circular Republic stands for too. So what we already did is we joined forces and we try to look at an incentive and action-based future all together. And I can only say that I'm very, very much thankful for your participation, for your clear words, for your standpoints, sharing your insights and perspective. Thank you all so much. Looking back into our audience, I would like to conclude with a call for action. Talking again about incentives, I would like to invite you to think of who is the most powerful person that you know, and how can you create an incentive with that kind of person in a timely manner on any sustainability effort that is possible to be done. So thank you all very much. I hope it was inspiring. I hope it was a bit fun. And yeah, let's walk the talk all together. Thank you so much.